Ever heard about the greatest story? Welcome to Reach for Life. I'm excited that today we will learn about that greatest story. My name is Victor, and alongside me there is Ogi, Angana, Monica, Melinda, and Busisiwe. So these great guys, 5 of them, will actually take us through the important segments of this program. Listen, look, learn, and live. Well, the program is the 4th of many that are still coming up in this important series of the program Reach for Life. So I really want you to make a date with us every time this program shows up. Do you know which story this one is that we're focusing on today? So listen, when authors or movie directors want to create the greatest stories, they all have a similar climactic moment. Here are 3 famous examples of the stories. The Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings is the story of Sauron, the Lord of the Rings, who is taking over Middle-earth with his evil powers. He is searching for the One Ring, which a hobbit, Frodo Baggins, carries. The only way to overcome Sauron is to destroy that ring. Then there is Harry Potter. It is the story of the Dark Lord Voldemort, who wants to rule the world, every wizard and mago. To stop him, he must be killed. The only way to do that is to destroy all his Horcruxes, and Harry himself is one of them. Then there is the Avengers, Infinity War. It is a story about Thanos and his army of Chitauri. Once Thanos has all the Infinity Stones, he plans to snap his fingers so that half of all the living creatures will stop existing. What can stop him? Well, if you know these stories, then you know that self-sacrifice is the only way. In The Lord of the Rings, Frodo Baggins secretly carries the One Ring to the fires of Mount Doom in Mordor, even though he will probably die in the process. When he throws the ring into the fire, Sauron is defeated and Middle-earth is saved. In Harry Potter and the Deadly Hallows, Harry allows Voldemort to cast the killing curse on him. But Voldemort only ends up destroying the final Horcrux that kept him immoral. Amazingly, Harry survives and in duel finally kills Voldemort. In the Avengers, Endgame, Iron Man takes the Infinity Stones from Thanos at the last moment. Iron Man snaps his fingers and Thanos and his army turn into space dust and Iron Man dies. In all these stories, one person sacrifices their life to defeat evil and rescue a world in danger. This is the big idea in the biggest stories ever told. Why do all the best-made stories include self-sacrifice? Because they all point to the greatest story of all. Now, it's time to invite Angana to take us through some scriptures. I'll just let her bring those scriptures to us. Over to you, Angana.
Now we will read the book of Mark, chapter 15, verses 16 to 20, 25 to 34, and 37 to verse 38. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace. It was called the Praetorium. They called together the whole company of soldiers. The soldiers put a purple robe on Jesus. Then they twisted thorns together to make a crown. They placed it on his head. They began to call out to him, "We honor you, King of the Jews." Again and again they hit him on the head with a stick. They spit on him. They fell on their knees and pretended to honor him. After they had made fun of him, they took off the purple robe. They put his own clothes back on him. Then they led him out to nail him on the cross. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. They wrote out the charge against him. It read, "The King of the Jews." They crucified with him 2 rebels against Rome. One was on his right and one was on his left. Those who passed by shouted at Jesus and made fun of him. They shook their heads and said, "So you are going to destroy the temple and build it again in 3 days? Then come down from the cross. Save yourself." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of the law made fun of him among themselves. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, the King of Israel, come down now from the cross. When we see that, we will believe." Those who were being crucified with Jesus also made fun of him. At noon, darkness covered the whole land. It lasted 3 hours. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani. This means, my God, why have you deserted me? With a loud cry, Jesus took his last breath. The temple curtain was torn into two from top to bottom.
So much to hear, yes, from those verses, Angana. Thank you so much. And we need to turn to Melinda to help us, pick lessons from the passage that Angana brought us.
So what are we learning from today's passage? What a terrible thing to experience. Jesus was stripped naked, beaten until almost unrecognizable, whipped, crowned with thorns, and spit on, nearly unconscious from blood loss. He was forced to drag a heavy cross up a hill. When he got there, he was nailed to it through his wrists and ankles. Israel had waited a long time for the promised Messiah, the true king who would rescue them. Some believed Jesus was the Messiah, so his enemies mocked him. He was crowned not with a golden crown, but with a ring of thorns. They gave him a royal purple robe, then stripped him of it. They pretended to bow to him and put up a sign mocking him as the king of the Jews. People insulted him as they passed by. Instead of the people and soldiers showing compassion as he died, they mocked him. The Roman Empire designed crucifixion as a way of not just killing someone, but of treating them like animals. But see, he really is God's true king. To our surprise, he rules the world not from a throne, but from a cross. But how does he rule the world? Verses 33 and 34 tells us that at noon, darkness covered the whole land. It lasted 3 hours. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, my God, why have you deserted me?" What was happening? Somehow all the sin of the human race, including the sin of each of us, was being placed on him, and the punishment was being carried out there. And somehow Jesus was defeating the world's evil and rescuing the world. When he breathed his last breath, the temple curtains tore in two on its own. We see this in verse 38. What does it mean? Long before Jesus came, the Jews built a temple. God lived in it in the most holy place. No one would enter through the curtain. Only the high priest would enter through the curtain once a year. This reminded the people that their sin was serious and separated them from God. But as Jesus died, the curtain was supernaturally torn open. This is amazing news. God tore down the curtain that stood between us and him through Jesus' self-sacrifice. With our sins forgiven, the door is now open for us. We are welcomed into God's closest company.
It's great to hear how these things pan out in this program, Rich for Life. So we have listened to the passage earlier on that I'm going to read, and then Melinda has helped us with some lessons. But hey, don't move away. Why? Monica, Ogie, and Busi will help us discuss this important topic today.
I'm so moved to think Jesus carried the cross up the hill for me. To think he stretched his arms open on that wooden beam for me. Phew.
Have you ever thought of how strange it is to wear a cross around your neck? The cross was a device of torture. If I wore a tiny electric chair or a hangman's noose around my neck, that would be weird.
Yes, but the cross reminds us why the story of Jesus is the greatest of all time. Like Harry Potter and Iron Man and Frodo Baggins, Jesus faces evil head on and sacrifices himself to rescue us all. The only difference is that the story of Jesus really happened.
And it's not only true, it's the best news ever. He could have saved himself, but he didn't because he wanted to save us.
And he did it all for love. In the Bible, Paul writes, "But here is how God has shown his love for us. While we were sinners, Christ died for us. Romans chapter 5, verse 8. In step 3 of our journey, we learn that our sin is much worse than we realized. But now we see that God's love, the way He rescues us through self-sacrifice, is much better than we dreamed.
Yes, He would rather die than live without us. That part about Him tearing down the curtain and welcoming us into His presence is just amazing. Have you ever gone to a sporting event, a restaurant, or even a party where there is a VIP section?
VIP stands for very important person, where you are given a special pass. No, I've never been invited into a VIP section.
But you have been invited into God's VIP section. That's what Jesus was doing on the cross. Peter explains, Christ also suffered once for our sins. The one who did what is right suffered for those who don't do right. He suffered to bring you to God. And that is in the book of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 18.
The cross brings us to God. Each of us is invited into God's kingdom. Each of us is very important to Jesus.
But you have to trust in Jesus, trust His self-sacrifice, and then enter in.
Time's up. I can't wait for what's next in the Believe journey.
Until next time, keep on reaching for life.
Oh, well, I wish you guys stayed on. But hey, I know that you come again in this program, Reach for Life, when we continue our conversations as we keep reflecting on very important things. Today, we focused on the greatest story. Let me turn to you, dear listener. Why don't you get in touch? Tell us what you've learned from the program. Send us an email to info@twrafrica.org. info@twrafrica.org. Or you can also WhatsApp to +27 78 014 7955. +27 78 014 7955. And if you send us a WhatsApp message or an email, you'll receive a link for many resources on Reach for Life program that you have listened to today. So on behalf of my friends Ogi Sitoli, Angana Kaonga, Monica Murava, Melinda Kajilima, and Busisiwe Matebule, I am Victor saying, let's reach for life. Bye. See you in the next program.
You are King.